I never lose, either I win or I learn. Those are my only options, to whomever it may concern. About to be a hot topic, play with fire, you get burned. Ain't nobody give me nothing, whatever I got, better I earn. I never lose, but I learn. I either win or I learn. Those are my only options, to whomever.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Strong AF podcast. I'm your host, Ashley.
I'm Yuri.
And we're so glad to have Dalton on tonight with us. I'm telling you, we found Dalton, earlier this year?
Yes.
And not regretted it a single minute. He is amazing, and we've just
thank you.
been able to learn so much and try so many new things from him, and his story is inspirational. I'm telling you, just seeing everything that he does and hearing him, you wouldn't believe how young he is. I mean, he's very passionate about what he does.
Mm-hmm. He's wise beyond
his
years.
He is. So I'll tell you a little bit about Dalton Cowan. He started what would become Cowan's Fantastic Fungi LLC, a small-scale family-owned and operated mushroom farm in November of 2018. And everything in the universe conspired against him. He nearly lost everything many times, and he grew more mold than mushrooms for a long time.
Indeed, yes.
Absolutely. But he knew in his heart of hearts that this would become something far greater than himself. And if he just kept pushing, and that's what he did, and he didn't stop for anyone or anything. So welcome, Dalton.
Nobody should.
Exactly. A lot of people do, though.
Yes. So welcome to the show, Dalton. We're so excited to have you on.
I'm very excited to be here.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
How old am I now? I'm 27. Like you said, I started in November of 2018, what would eventually become the company that I now own and operate, which has reached heights that I had no idea that they would ever reach. In addition to that, I also work full-time as a body piercer here at Inky in beautiful sunny downtown Granite Quarry, North Carolina. And I have a lot of fun doing that. But of course, I pierce by day and grow mushrooms by night, essentially. And I've been selling mostly just to kind-hearted people just like yourselves, and also customers at the farmers market for about 2 years now. And it's at times been extremely challenging, at others extremely rewarding, and I wouldn't change it for the world.
That's awesome. So I know that all of our listeners, and even we are wondering, why mushrooms? What got you into it?
How?
People ask me that all the time, and to be perfectly honest with you, I really don't know. If anything, the mushrooms chose me. I didn't choose the mushrooms. In a nutshell, I just kind of had a casual interest in. I'm extremely prone to obsession, and when I find something that I like, I tend to give it my all and really go at it, especially with creative things and anything to do with horticulture or agriculture. I'm also really big into bonsai. But it just kind of found me rather, and I knew that I could make something great out of it if I just gave it my all, and so I did just that.
That's incredible.
Yeah, you could definitely tell you put your heart into it, because I mean, just the videos you send us when we're asking you a question about what is this mushroom, and then you go into great detail about it, and I'm just sitting there like,
yeah, exactly.
Wow.
I just saute this stuff
total nerd through and through. Tell you all the Latin names and all that good stuff, and it's definitely one of those things where it's not hard necessarily, but there are a lot of steps involved. It takes a long time. There's a lot that can go wrong. I mean, obviously, like I said, I grew more mold than mushrooms until very, very recently.
Yeah, we tried one of those boxes that you grow it out of off Amazon. Mm-hmm. You just spritz the water on and it grows. Yeah. And
excellent. How'd that go for you?
Well, one of them worked really well.
It worked too well.
Yeah. So, they both worked pretty well in the beginning, but it said to harvest them when, they unfolded. And by the time they unfolded, they were very hard and crusty. And I was like, well, that's not right. So we didn't do that one very well.
Probably just not quite enough humidity.
Yeah.
You especially because like what I do is I have like what I refer to as a fruiting chamber, and it's basically just an enclosed tent that has it's climate controlled, it's humidity controlled, all that good stuff. So it keeps the humidity level above 80%, which is quite saturated, and that prevents any sort of that drying that tends to occur.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's good to know. Ours was just kind of like out on the counter.
We did what it said. It said face sunlight,
Right.
spray with water.
Yeah.
We don't want to put them in direct sunlight. Bright indirect lighting, but direct sunlight will
okay.
cause them to kind of brown, and they can get a little sunburnt sometimes.
Well, I think that's what we did.
Out in nature, you'll generally find them. I assume that you were growing oyster mushrooms of some type, and out in nature, you'll generally find those. They're saprophytic species. That means that they grow on dead and decaying organic material.
Oh.
You can find them growing typically on hardwood logs, but you can also find them in wood chips or leaf litter, different things like that. Anything high in cellulose. As far as cultivation goes, I mean, you can grow them on pretty much anything. I mean, you can even grow them on old T-shirts, believe it or not.
Wow, that's
now
so cool.
what they consume as a food source is glucose, basically. So anything high in cellulose, a cellulose molecule is actually just a tightly bound chain of glucose. And what the mushroom enzymes do is they break down that cellulose into glucose, and then that glucose can then be digested and absorbed as a food source.
Wow, that's awesome.
I knew a couple of those words in there.
Yeah.
If you would like to learn more, I'd be happy to teach you.
Oh, definitely, yes. Oh my goodness. So
you guys have been eating my mushrooms for a few months now. How do you like them?
Oh my gosh, they're amazing, and I love you always have a different variety for us too.
Well, I know people tend to get bored with the same thing over and over and over, and honestly, I do too. So, I mean, right now, at any given time, there's about 12 different varieties that I try to keep in rotation. There's about 4 or 5 of those that I really do consistently, just because they're easy and/or produce well, or they're popular and my customers love them. Of course, that plays in a lot.
Yeah, and especially with us living a vegan lifestyle, like mushrooms are pretty much an essential item for us. So it's nice to have a wide variety too. Like that coral, what was it, the coral tooth that you gave us?
There's a very close relative of lion's mane. Coralloides.
Yeah.
Something like that. Okay, I don't quite know how to pronounce that, to be perfectly honest with you, but
it sounded right to me.
Yeah.
Pretty much the same mushroom as lion's mane, honestly. I mean, the texture is quite a bit different. It's a lot more delicate.
We were able to turn it into like
medicinal components, pretty much the same.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, we were able to turn it into like an egg scramble type thing. That's how we turned ours into, like an egg substitute, and it worked really well.
Yeah, my favorite would have to be any kind of oyster mushroom.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that deep, rich, umami, almost beef-like flavor is absolutely unparalleled, and that's what I try to explain to a lot of people that come to me and they say, well, I just don't like mushrooms. Well, to be honest with you, you've probably only ever had 1, maybe 2 species in your entire life. Because here's the thing: a crimini mushroom, a portobello mushroom, a white button mushroom, and a baby bell are all the same species. They're just grown in different conditions and harvested at different stages of maturity. So you've actually been duped by the supermarket. They are not different mushrooms at all.
I would have never known that.
And then, of course, the other big one is shiitake, which I grow a little bit of. I don't grow a whole lot of it because honestly, I'm not a big fan of shiitake either. I'm not a big fan of the texture. They have this sort of very robust, almost metallic flavor that I'm just not a big fan of. But when contrasted with the oyster mushrooms or any mushroom in the Pleurotus genus, they're totally different because your oyster mushrooms are going to be more like meat. They have a much richer flavor. It's much more agreeable, in my opinion, and it's a terrific meat substitute.
It is. It's one of our favorite meat substitutes, and they're really good. We like to fry them up, and those are amazing. Like the kids, they're like, oh, can we have some more fried chicken?
Can't tell the difference.
No.
Well, one of my chefs that I sell to, her name is Chanel. She's one of the personal chefs for several of the Carolina Panthers. So
wow,
my mushrooms actually feed the Carolina Panthers to some degree.
That's awesome.
That's really awesome. And she does the same thing with it. She'll just kind of fry it up, and she made like a mock chicken and waffles one time that was just
Oh gosh.
absolutely tremendous. And another great thing that you can do with those, you can take the whole clusters. You guys probably know this already, but you can, put them into like a pan, and then get like a heavier cast iron pan. It's a little bit
Smash it
smaller.
down. Mhm.
Smash them down, make them into steaks, eat them with a little steak sauce, and I mean, you really almost can't tell the difference.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, with you growing so many mushrooms, do you tend to eat more plant-based, or are you still, I guess, kind of like what's your nutrition like since you have all this on your farm?
Well, I think there's a strong correlation between how many mushrooms you eat and how much meat you eat, a negative correlation. I find that, because I myself am not vegan nor am I vegetarian,
Right.
but as I've started to grow and consume more mushrooms, I just find myself eating less and less meat. I find myself more and more turned off by it. Uh, I- the mushrooms really replace that sort of umami vibe that most vegans, vegetarians tend to kind of miss out on.
Mhm.
But I definitely don't consume as much as I used to, and especially now that I raise animals, I raise chickens just for their eggs. I don't eat them, but just having them around, I got to thinking the other day, it was like, okay, if I can't go out in the backyard and chop off one of these chickens' heads and eat it, then what business do I have going down the road and buying a chicken sandwich?
Right.
So yeah, it definitely has got me thinking a lot more, and being a lot more mindful about what I put into my body, which of course we've all been young and dumb, and
Yeah.
sometimes not made the best decisions about what we consume. And the older I get, the more mushrooms that I add to my diet, certainly become more aware.
That's incredible. And I mean, that's what we kind of talk about to our clients too, is like, you don't have to make a massive change to make a massive difference in your life. It's baby steps
Sure.
that make a big deal. And
sure.
so that's really great that just adding, and that's the thing too, like you don't have to eliminate a lot of stuff from your diet, but adding the right things in can make a huge difference.
Oh, certainly. I mean, most people are just, they live on ground beef and fried potatoes,
Right.
essentially. And you've got to eat your veggies. You need fiber. You need all those vitamins, all those nutrients.
Right, exactly. And that was the kind of diet that I grew up on, beef or chicken and fried potatoes and onions.
Yeah, that's all they eat. Taters.
Taters and onions, that's right.
Frozen pizzas.
Oh
chicken
yeah.
nuggets,
Anything
all that BS.
processed, quick and easy.
Mhm.
Yeah, and like that just stuff that stuff wasn't taught to me, and like I didn't understand it. So just knowing that you can make simple changes is like huge. And you also, I mean, you don't just grow mushrooms. You've been expanding your farm, right? So you've got chickens and you have goats too, don't you?
I've gotten rid of the goats. My
Oh.
goat days are over.
Couldn't take it any longer.
They were just extremely hard to manage.
Yeah.
They cost more than it just wasn't sustainable as far as from a business standpoint. And then what the final straw was, they broke into my greenhouse and ate nearly all of my greenhouse material. And after that I sold them, got rid of them. They're at a buddy's farm now, and good riddance, to be perfectly honest.
Oh man.
But yeah, we're expanding. I do a fair amount of outdoor cultivation as well, like I mentioned, on logs, and I've got a few mulch beds and a few compost piles where I take my so-called spent blocks, but they're not exactly spent. They'll still continue to produce. I'll just put those outside. It produces a lesser quality fruit, of course, because of environmental factors or insect damage or whatever. But those I mostly consume for myself, and mostly save the the nice pretty mushrooms for customers and so on.
Hey, it doesn't matter what they look like, just how they taste, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, right, absolutely. And I can tell you right now that chefs don't care about bugs.
No.
Don't care about bugs at all. But I've always grown vegetables. I mean, I've grown a garden every single year, with the exception of this year, just because we moved and we're in a pretty heavily wooded area right now. For the last decade, I've been gardening vegetables of all kinds and varieties. And not really on a commercial scale or for retail or anything like that, but certainly for my own consumption and for canning and to give to friends and that sort of thing.
Right.
There's just something amazing about watching other things grow.
Yeah.
And that's my bottom line. I just like to watch things grow.
That's awesome. So, what was your childhood like then? Did you grow up on a farm, or did you grow up where your parents were gardening and canning and things like that?
No, not at all. And I think that's what kind of led me to want to do that sort of thing. I grew up in the inner city, lower middle class, single parent household. It was just me and my mom, a couple of stepdads throughout the years and that sort of thing. But we didn't have much of a yard, and we are also underneath a really large tree. So we had this one little strip that was about 2 feet wide and about 20 feet long, which received adequate sunlight. And so I always just grew my garden there as a teenager, and everybody in the neighborhood would come over and help with it, and we'd all just kind of share and everything.
Oh, that's great. I love the idea of having that community kind of garden.
Yeah, that's something I never would have thought of, especially at such a young age.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I grew up in the inner city, but I mean, I've never quite felt at home in that environment. I really enjoy spending time in the forest. I'm somewhat of a loner. Really, really, really enjoy my alone time, but at the same time, I do value the company of other people, of course, and especially now that I've got a family. I can't really just hide away in my little hole anymore.
Yeah.
But anywho, yeah, and I think that's what made me yearn for this sort of lifestyle that I'm living now. Is just my idea of a perfect hell is sitting in a cubicle for 8 hours a day and then driving on nothing but pavement to get back home
Right.
to my studio apartment or whatever. And that is just not the kind of life for me. I'm much more happy getting up early and working and being covered in chicken poop than and then working some sort of cushy office job.
Right. That's awesome. I mean, I think it just really helps to show you like what all you have to go through to grow that food. Like you appreciate it so much more.
Yeah, especially being hands-on, like you said, being out in nature and watching it produce day to day.
I mean, we don't have a lot of space like outside in our backyard. We have a pretty small backyard. So we've got one of those tower gardens. And we like to plant in the spring and that and let it grow. And it's nice because the kids are able to go out there and like see the growth and understand what's going on.
Right.
And then pick their own food for dinner.
I mean, it's fun for everybody.
So yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. So you said that you had all kinds of things pushing against you when you were trying to start up your business. Can you tell us a little bit more about like the struggles that you went through?
Oh God, yes. Okay, so first of all, about a year prior to starting that company, I decided that I wasn't going to work for somebody else. I wasn't going to follow a mainstream path. I was going to blaze my own trail, and I didn't quite know how I was going to do that at the time. It really all started out. I used to be a manager at a vape shop. We sold electronic cigarettes and juice and that sort of thing, which was fun for a really long time. That company was about to go under. I jumped ship before it did, and a couple of weeks later, my buddy hit me up, and I'm actually here now. But he was like, "Hey man, if you want to come help me out at the tattoo shop." At the time, we did vinyl decals, we did screen printing T-shirts, that sort of thing. And then eventually, I was like, "Hey man, have you never had a piercer here?" And he was like, "No." And so offered to do that. So I started doing that. Then I got the crazy idea to start a mushroom farm. And at the time, well, she's basically my wife now, but at the time I was dating a girl, and we had just found out that she had gotten pregnant with my baby, and she was absolutely not okay with me doing what I was doing. She said, "You need to cut your hair. You need to go get a quote unquote real job and all this other stuff and stop playing around with mushrooms." And I said, "No, that's not what I'm going to do." And so we split for a little while, a couple of years. So that was a big one. Because it felt like I didn't have any support. It felt like I didn't. I asked myself a lot. It was like, okay, is this really what I need to be doing? But like, I just knew that if I kept pushing, that eventually everything would be okay. So there was that. At the time, I was renting, and as you can imagine, my landlord was not exactly keen on a guy running a mushroom farm in his spare bedroom. there was that hurdle. We finally came to an arrangement there. And then, like I said, there were so many times where just because you spend a couple of $100, you do a run of fruiting blocks or whatever, and then every single one of them turns a green instead of white. Bad sign. And so once they contaminate like that, they're not going to produce mushrooms. And so you pour all this money into it in good faith, and nothing becomes of it. And a couple of those in a row, and that'll sink your company really, really, really quickly.
Yeah.
So there were so many times where I was just like, there's no way that I can continue to do this. I've got to fold this thing up, and for one reason or another, whether it be bravery or stupidity, you be the judge, but it just kept going with it. And these days, and you guys can, if you guys want to include a link to my YouTube channel, that
Yeah,
would be
definitely.
awesome.
You want to go give it a shout out too?
Sorry?
Your YouTube channel, what's it called?
It's just under my name. It's Dalton Cowan.
Okay, awesome.
I don't have many
in the show
subscribers,
notes
maybe like 250 at this moment. So I'm not hard to find. Got videos about chickens and mushrooms and all that sort of stuff. And I've got one showing how now I grow in a shed, no longer grow in a spare bedroom. I had the shed custom built, and it's a lovely 10-foot by 20-foot shed that I've converted, and that's where I do all my incubation, and it's where I keep the fruiting chamber and all that good stuff now. Do most of my lab work in the house still, but working on getting some shipping containers down on the property and some other things to kind of get it all out. That way the kids and the lady can have the house now.
The shed looks cool from what I've
Yeah.
seen. It looks cool.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
That's awesome. I love your story. So with everything kind of pulling against you, like what gave you the strength to just keep going? What motivated you?
I have no idea. Pure stupidity. Pure stupidity.
So how long did it take?
Stubbornness.
Stubbornness. That's a good one.
I'm just very hard-headed.
And that drive to like work for yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How long did it take to go from like the molding blocks to actually starting to produce?
So typically we start with a culture. This can be achieved in one of two ways typically. So you can either have a culture on a petri dish, that's known as an agriculture, or you can have a culture inside of a syringe. That's known as a liquid culture. And so you use the culture, well, first of all, you sterilize grain. Any kind of grain will work. I mean, you can use whole oats, you can use popcorn, you can use wild bird seed, just about anything. What you do with that is you put it into jars or bags, you sterilize that, and then in a sterile environment, so working in front of a flow hood, which is a piece of laboratory equipment that basically scrubs all of the particulate matter out of the air, including mold spores. You work in front of that, and then you introduce that culture to your sterilized grain. That takes about 2 to 4 weeks, depending on how much you add and what species it is that we're working on, before that's fully colonized. Once that's fully colonized, you can break that up, and then you add that to your actual fruiting block. And that takes, and do the same thing, work in front of the flow hood, sterilize it, and then introduce the what's called grain spawn into your fruiting block. That takes about another 3 to 4 weeks before it's fully colonized. And then some species, such as chestnuts and shiitake, take an extra ripening phase. Like in the case of shiitake, once that block achieves full colonization, which has already taken about 2 months from culture to fruiting block, it has to then incubate for about 3 more months before you can introduce fruiting. When it comes to when it comes to oyster mushrooms, that sort of thing, typically speaking, as soon as it's fully colonized, you can go ahead and induce fruiting. So for oyster mushrooms, the whole process from culture to fruits that I can actually sell to lovely folks like you typically takes about 2.5 months to 3 months. So anything that I produce right now today, I won't get fruits out of until sometime in February or so.
Oh, okay.
So it does take quite a long time.
Yeah. And you're actually teaching classes on how to do this, right?
I do teach classes. I do. I try to do 2 or 3 a year, and I'll show you how to make indoor fruiting blocks. We work in front of the flow hood. I'll show you how to make outdoor logs, kind of give you a tour of everything, and you'll get to hear me talk a lot. But that's basically it. But yeah, totally.
Great.
Everybody gets to take home an indoor fruiting block and an outdoor log as well. My next class is in March. I'll have to double check my notes and let you guys know when exactly. I can't remember exactly what the date is. I think it's on the second Sunday. Can't remember. But anyway, I've already started taking deposits for it, and I have 5 seats left. So if anybody else wants to join that, we're in Rockwell, North Carolina. It is a hands-on class. I'm not very technologically oriented, so my friend actually had to come set all this up for me before he left for the day. Otherwise, I would offer, some virtual learning experiences, but all the materials are provided. And in order to do what we're actually doing in the class, you would pretty much need all the specialized equipment that I already have down at the farm, such as the atmospheric steam sterilizer and the flow hood.
Awesome. So for our listeners who are interested, how can they reach out to you for a deposit to book a seat for that class?
The easiest way to get a hold of me is through my Facebook business page. It's Cowan's Fantastic Fungi LLC. Be very easily found. It's got kind of like a kind of an orange logo in the picture. That's the easiest way to get a hold of me. I'm working on a website right now. I've purchased the domain name and I've purchased a year of hosting service, but I haven't quite gotten around to setting all that up and that sort of thing. But once I do, I'll start taking deposits through there. As I mentioned, not very technologically savvy, so again, I'll have to have my friend up here who's a computer whiz help me set all that up. But through Facebook is how I typically do most of my business.
Okay, great. And we'll include all that in the show notes so that all the listeners can easily find you there.
Excellent.
Because I remember when I found it, because I was just searching oyster mushrooms near me.
You have no idea how hard it was to find oyster mushrooms. Like, I kept trying to order them at Whole Foods and it would say that they were available, and they would come and they were like, oh, they were out. I'm like, why can't I find these oyster mushrooms? So when we found you, we're like, oh my gosh, yay.
Because the only other site, it was some site where they were coming from like Washington, and
they were so high.
Oh my goodness, they were going to be like $200 for like 3 pounds of something.
That's outrageous.
It was crazy.
Typically speaking, when I was first starting out, and actually just this week I've reduced all my prices. So, but typically speaking, when I first started out, I would sell oyster mushrooms for about $20 a pound, which is a little bit higher than your average market value for them. But then again, they are somewhat of a scarce resource in this area. So luckily I was able to get away with that for a while, but I've now reduced that cost. Now I'm going to sell oyster mushrooms for $15 a pound forever, basically.
Wow.
And I might even reduce those further if I get to a scale to where I can do that comfortably, pass some of that value back to the customer. And because I don't need it. I don't need $1 million. I don't need to be a rich man. I just want to do what makes me happy for a living and enrich the lives of others. And if I can contribute to your nutrition and improve your life, then that's amazing. That's all.
Job well done. Job well done.
Thank you.
Definitely did that to ours.
Oh yeah. Definitely. And super easy to work with.
Well, thank you. I try not to be hard to get along with. Just don't ask my lady.
So I have a serious question, okay?
Okay.
So you're the mushroom guy. You have to hear a lot of jokes and things, and I'm sure you probably get some really sketchy requests too, being the mushroom guy.
There's one in every crowd. You can visibly see, because when you start talking about having a mushroom operation, you can visibly see excitement turn immediately to boredom when you explain that they're not those kinds of mushrooms. I do have a family to take care of. I have a lot to lose, and so I have no interest in cultivating anything that would land me in prison or trouble. However, I don't have, I'll be quite honest with you. I've eaten psychedelic mushrooms many, many times in my life, and I'm not going to say that they aren't a direct catalyst to what I'm doing now, but I'll leave it at that. And so I personally don't have a problem with anybody that wants to consume psychedelics of any kind. I think it ought to be all right. And really don't have a problem with it. What I do have a problem with is people, kind of bringing the heat to me, if you will. And as well as it's just kind of ignorant, because it's like you wouldn't walk up to a random person and say, hey, do you sell cocaine?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, it's
Yeah.
some days I'm more tolerant of it than others, but in general, it's just extremely bothersome.
Yeah, I can understand that. I would be too.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Awesome. We have really enjoyed speaking with you, but we have a few rapid questions here for you.
All right, excellent.
All right. So, as you know, this is the Strong AF podcast, right? So, we are a fitness and nutrition company. So, we have to tie a little bit in here, okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Please.
So, these are your preferences: weights or cardio?
Wait,
Favorite fruit?
I'm a little guy. If I do cardio, I'll
You just shrivel away.
Yeah.
Favorite fruit?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I'm going to be basic and say bananas, but I've also been into apples here lately.
That's all that's in our fruit bowl is bananas and apples right now.
That's what I
They're
ate at
so
lunch
cheap.
today.
I like grapes too. Grapes are nice.
Grapes are great. Okay, I feel like I know the answer to this one, but favorite vegetable?
I don't want to say mushrooms because I feel like that's typical. Kind of hard to pick a favorite. There's not very many that I don't like. I'm not a huge fan of the texture of eggplant, but I'll still eat it, especially fried. Other than that, my favorite vegetable is a salad, basically.
That's good.
What's your favorite mushroom?
My personal favorite mushroom, this is subject to change at any moment, would probably be my chestnuts, although I've also been lately a really big fan of black pearl kings, which are actually a hybrid mushroom. They're a genetic cross between a blue oyster and a king oyster, the way that I understand it. That may or may not be true, but a Japanese mycologist apparently came up with this, but I'm the only person that I know of in this area that's cultivating them. I finally wound up getting my hands on a culture, and they've produced really, really well. Customers have really loved them.
I believe we
They're
did try
delicious.
those,
Chestnuts,
right?
Foliota adiposa are probably my favorite. The orange ones that look like little hamburger caps on the top.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
What's your favorite comfort food?
Comfort food, probably a good old chicken fried steak with some white gravy.
And first thing that comes to your mind when you hear the word vegan?
Different, I suppose.
That's a good one.
It is, there's a lot of people that just look at it and view somebody that does that sort of thing as like a health nut or something like that. And I think that's an ignorant position to take. I think, I think that most people I've seen you guys and your transformations and they're just absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
That gives testament to the fact that it can at least can be. I mean, of course, Oreos are vegan,
Right.
and if you eat nothing but Oreos, you're probably not going to be very healthy. But it certainly can be a more advantageous and nutritious way to live one's life, I think. And honestly, here lately, I've been toying with the idea. As I mentioned, I really don't eat as much meat as I used to, and just that kind of just happened organically. That wasn't a conscious decision necessarily. But yeah, I mean, I think it can do a lot for the planet. I think on the other hand, also though, people tend to not realize that if we grow more vegetables, then typically your larger farms are going to hunt more varmin and rabbits and that sort of thing, which is going to contribute to suffering in that way. So in my mind, there's kind of a struggle. I'm
Right.
at this point conflicted because I don't exactly know which is actually producing less suffering in the world, and I think that's what our collective goal is here.
Yeah, I can hear you on that. And then our final question: where do you get your strength from?
I get my strength from my mama. She's always been there for me, and if I need anything in the world, she's always there. But these days also, my son, he just turned 18 months and he started talking, although he isn't saying very much, and he really keeps me motivated every morning. Gives me something to get out of bed and go strive for.
That's awesome. So what was your mom's first thoughts when you decided to leave the vaping company and dive deep into mushrooms?
Couldn't tell you, to be honest. I mean, maybe. I mean, I know she supported me in it, but she probably deep down was like, that boy is just doing something else.
We just loved having Dalton on here. I'm telling you, that guy is so smart. I mean, who knew there was so much to know about mushrooms, right?
Yeah, he definitely puts his knowledge of mushrooms to use, and he's very passionate about his work and definitely doing whatever it takes to provide for him and his growing family.
Exactly. And I just love his story about, all the obstacles he overcame, because it can be really tough to continue your passion and your dream when those you care about the most aren't supporting you in the beginning.
Yeah, that's pretty much when you're not giving up and you continue to stay strong and pushing forward towards following your dream or whatever madness you may have, as he kindly expressed, you just keep pushing and you'll eventually benefits the fruit of your labor.
Exactly. I'm so happy for him.